Okay, so I've had a Muller Lite and a drink. I hope you've had something to eat and a drink as well. We are now on page 2 because we've just finished. Oh heck. We've just finished page 1. We're paying attention. Notice how I said we wouldn't do scribbles, and we have. We are not on the second page. Don't panic. So, I'm saying if buildings were paper. Okay? So if buildings were paper. Now, I said in the introduction that we're going to have a lot of symbols. So realistically, we're going to look for symbols. These symbols are buildings. These buildings are symbols. The maps here are symbols. They're all things made out of paper. In fact, from the first page, we've got religious texts as symbols. Okay? So the religious text is a symbol. The building is a symbol. And if buildings were paper, well, they're not. But architecturally, they started out. So we'll argue it. Maps are definitely made out of paper, or they used to be in the olden days before GPS. And fine slips from grocery shops that say how much was sold and what was paid by credit card. Okay, so this is a symbol of a receipt. I can spell. All right, so far we've annotated the middle page. We've said all of these things are symbols. They're human constructs, though. So humans make architectural plans and build buildings. Humans draw lines across continents and make countries and maps. Humans buy and sell. So these are all symbols. Of course they are, because we are the only humans use paper and monkeys and ants do not. Okay? So we're saying that all of these symbols are symbols of our differences. So in this middle page, the center of the poem is arguing that these differences are not important. Because we know that she feels that it's our similarities which are the same, and that they are what make us equal and similar to each other. In the final line, as you know, we've read about an architect. We're going to think architect mixed with grand design. We're not thinking of Kevin MacLeod here and grand designs with capital letters. We're talking about this being more religious language. Okay? So at this point, when we talk about architecture, we're talking about God. So we've gone back to our original idea. However, in the middle page, we've ignored the religious language, and we're talking about man-made things, and these are where our symbols come in. Let's have a read then. If buildings were paper, I might feel their drift. See how easily they fall away on a sigh, a shift in the direction of the wind. I don't think I want to say too much about that. Okay? All I want to do is focus on the fact that we start with a giant if. Okay? And that's what gets us to recognize the idea of them being symbols. I'd rather focus on the middle one when we talk about maps. Look at the structure of this sentence. Look how teeny weeny it is. And that's why I'd like to talk about it. Because you've got the idea of the if that symbol is true, then this one too. So you can see it's all part of one argument. And a map is a really good symbol to use. Because it's only really somewhere like England, and even England with the United Kingdom, we have a fake line where Wales starts and England stops, and a fake line determining where Scotland starts and England stops. But all across the European continent, unless men put up borders, there is nothing to stop us going wherever we want. Nothing makes us different. It is the idea of it being a human-created map that is chopped up the world. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Should never do videos in the afternoon. Okay, so we've got maps 2. Now look at what we've said here. The sun shines through their borderlines. Who is the sun? Another religious piece of imagery. Who is, and this repetition of the word shining is starting to get a bit annoying now, because we know that from the very beginning of the poem, we know from the very beginning of the poem it's light shining, and then here in the poem the sun is shining, and then at the end of the poem the daylight is breaking, and therefore this shining, breaking sunlight is showing that God is all its potential. Remember, it's not a definite. This could suggest, this is the could part. God is always wanting. Now, how we see it? We see it through the shining. Therefore, he's always wanting us to treat each other the same. Because you see, the things that we record on paper with our own selves, they're not important. The sun shines through them all and says it doesn't matter whether we draw lines, God shines through the borderlines. And look at what else he shines through. The borderlines, the marks that rivers make, roads, rail tracks, mountains, okay? God is shining through all of those. And that list, which is why I've done it in pink, okay? That list indicates this, that God is always wanting us to treat each other the same, and potentially to him, okay, our differences that we put on ourselves, like cultural or money related, are unimportant. Therefore, it's not important that we draw roads to break lines, that we have rail tracks, we have borders in maps. That's why the map symbol is so useful. And then it's not really important how much money we have. Okay? It really isn't. What is this? What was paid by credit card might fly our lives like paper kites. What is this? This is something you're all going to go, ooh, miss, it's another thing. Okay? I refuse to mention it unless you notice it. And I've told you before, if you can't find the metaphors, look for the similes. But you have to think of something useful to use them for. This is a weird one, isn't it? Because we've got a kite. Most kites are made out of either plastic, vinyl, or paper. And in China, they are always made out of paper. And in Japan, they are 100% always made out of paper. So, are we saying that these pieces of paper that we make ourselves fly our lives? What does that word mean then? Are we saying that we allow, writing entirely backwards, we allow the paper, and we'll call them flimsy, yeah, human creations, to control our lives? We allow that. We permit these differences to control our reactions to other people and our interactions, our relationships, in fact. Don't we? And when we permit these differences to control our relations, then we start treating people differently. But using this paper, we get the flimsiness, don't we? Therefore, the kite is flimsy. Should almost have said tissue. And every time we see the word paper now, we see flimsy and tissue. And if it's a paper kite, Well, it's not really a permanent thing. It breaks, it's flimsy, and yet we still allow them to do it. So why is she using this modal verb here? Is it because why she's almost questioning why we're doing it? We might let this happen. Most of us do. Most of us do judge other people based on money and color of skin, and therefore what money can buy is like different clothes and different classes and smartness and ability. So always starting with this modal question, if this is true, then this is how we end up. And we're not happy with that. And she is very unhappy with that. Now, she's written this as the first poem in her collection called The Terrorist at My Table. And therefore she's likely to be really unhappy with having terrorists hurt the country that she grew up in, which is Scotland. But she understands where they're coming from, because they're being prejudged before they do anything. And yes, terrorists exist, but not everybody is a terrorist who has a different colored skin. And so maybe we're being too careful and too judgmental. And then she finishes that last statement on a full stop, which we don't have a huge number of. And she starts the end of the poem here with, back with the religious semantic field. God could use all this paper. Okay, so how is he going to use these ideas that we've written on paper? He's going to place layer over layer, luminous script over numbers, over line. What have we got here? We're getting another list. She's not really leaving anything out, is she? She's got things in her words. She's got numbers. She's got lines. She's got script. And she's got this repetition of layer. Okay? And you could say, oh yes, I already noticed that because of the l. And you're right, there is alliteration there with the L. So using this list, what are we getting? Because list is a good structure idea. And we've already had the previous list with maps. We might not have to talk about it again, but it will really help us with the message. What is this? It's not leaving anything out, is it? It's listing everything we can put on paper. Lines, numbers, and writing. Okay? And in the end, the daylight still breaks through. Now before, it didn't break through. What did it do? What was the word that we had? We had it, the light was, here it is, shining through. Okay? And at this point, it's breaking through. So using this word here, and the through is emphasized because it's at the beginning of the line. That's what the enjambment does. So it's breaking. This is more destructive. So we start off how God can shine through when we can't stop him. And now, in the end, he's not really going to give us a choice. The daylight it's maybe not more destruction. I know you hate it when I scribble things out. But you'll see that I'm still thinking this through. Is instead of maybe destructive, it's more insistent. More insistently shining through and showing the truth. Now that we've been through almost everything humans can do, writing, numbers, lines, it's showing us insistently how God and his ideas of equality in both Muslim and Christian faiths break down the barriers And look what it's breaking down. Capitals, which we could say has two meanings. We either have words or we have, how would we say this? We would have centers of power. So the capital of the United States is Washington, D.C. The capital of England is found in London. The centers of power. So it is breaking down all of the things we put in place to control. So we've got the capitals, we've got the words, we've got our power centers, we've got our statues, that's what a monolith is, showing power. That's why they've gone for Edward Colston in Bristol, because they don't like the fact that that statue has power, as he should not be revered, as he was a terrible slave trader. So this is what the daylight is breaking through. This idea of God saying you must be equal is breaking through the way that humans organize their power. And human power is going out. Notice how it's everything. It's everything we say, everything we are, everything we make. And now it's just everything with a focus on the make. Notice the, okay? And we are commanded in the same language that break is, okay? It's very forceful, and we are commanded to find a way to trace a grand design with living tissue. So people are important, money and power are not, because we're really focusing on the fact that we've got living tissue here. And previously she talked about tissue being paper tissue, and now she's getting right to her point. And this is where we get to the point in the final stanza. People are more important, living tissue is it. We break through all the paper, and we have humans working together to raise a structure never meant to last of paper. So people are raising a structure of paper that is never meant to last, but it's actually, we are creating our own identities, our skin, okay? And that's a really complex idea, and I'm not expecting you to write in that kind of detail about it, but I would really like you to notice this repetition of transparent here, and show that realistically that she's using this word to indicate that it should be obvious for us what we need to do. It's pretty clear, yeah, because we can see through the rubbish, and we can, it is, with those meanings, it should be obvious what we need to do, okay? And then we have this gorgeous bit of transparent and turning, yep, and thinning. So we have all this alliteration, and the alliteration is really focusing our attention on the word, the last alliterative word then, is that we are turning into, okay? And this is a really complex idea. So what you will focus on is you will focus on the fact that there is the transparent that's repeated, the fact that she has said that people are important, okay, and that she is making a command for us to raise and to, here it is, to find a way. Now, she suggests that it's tracing a grand design. What does the word trace mean? Okay? Trace could mean that we could copy it. And trace could also mean that we look back through our family history. Okay? And so what she's saying is, we can trace our grand design, which always leads back to the same ancestors. Remember, Christians, I don't know how much you do RS at school, but Christians and Muslims both go back to Abraham, and Abraham is our common ancestor. And before that, common ancestors, we are the same. And therefore, this really is a confrontation to us in the Western world, requesting our acceptance of Muslim people and saying we have value and we are the same as you. Now, if we can't see this as a topical poem, I don't know what else we've got. And so you've got to say, what can I use to compare with this? This is a poem very easily compared with The Emigre, a woman who's come from a different culture which no longer exists entirely, and who has maintained parts of that culture in herself and is crying out to be accepted in her new country. Maybe she's not being entirely accepted. She feels still like an outsider, an emigre. You could also say that this is a really good poem to compare when you're talking about identity, and therefore kamikaze, and the power that country rulers have over the people of their country. And she's crying out for us to be more accepting. And in kamikaze, you could argue that the mother is explaining to her children that they needed to remember to be more accepting of other people's choices, and realistically, it's families which are more important. And she's almost ashamed of the way that she behaved to her father when she slowly grew silent and stopped talking to him, because she's realized that she didn't have a chance to ask him why he turned back. Was it really because he loved her and would have missed her family, and they would have been without a father? And no matter what his country said about how he would have had to die, and no matter how his wife behaved, he couldn't desert his family like that. Okay, so well done everyone for working so hard today. This was a hard poem and I've worked you hard. So go off and enjoy the rest of your day.